Um, as you have been introduced by Zenzele, my name is Benson. I'm going to be your host or the moderator for the next coming sessions. And now our next presenter is Pierre. He's a commercial director for Spatial Edge, if I'm spelling it correctly. And Pierre,
Sorry, Ben. I
yeah.
think Ori must come first. Then Pia will be next after him. Sorry,
Okay.
I think yeah.
All right, Zenzele. Let's welcome Ori. Ori is the enterprise pre-sales manager for Infobip Africa. Greetings, Ori. This is your session.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to learn more from you.
Greetings,
Over
Mr.
to you, Ori.
Thanks, Mr. Benson. I know my name is quite a mouthful. Maybe it threw you off for a second. That's why you couldn't get it right the first time. But
It's.
yeah, call
I
me.
think. I think
Yeah,
it's safe not to disturb it more. Over to you, sir.
exactly. No, thanks. Let me quickly share my screen. Just let me know once you see it. I'll be sharing
All right.
first the desktop, and then I'll just launch the actual slide. Just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Yes. Your
All
screen
clear?
is on. It's
The
here.
slide. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
I think it
Yes,
should
we
be
can
the
see
first
it.
page. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, as you stated, my name is Orediretse Molebaloa, and I'm an enterprise pre-sales manager at Infobip. So the main purpose of today's discussion, obviously, is our flavor of personalized and humanizing the shopping experience as a powerful strategy for growth and retention in terms of customer bases. For those who have never heard of Infobip, at high level, Infobip is a global leader in omni-channel communication. We make it our business, to simplify how brands connect and engage and delight their customers on a global scale. So think of an organization that needs to have a global strategy. Let's use SMS as an example. And you need to make sure that you have those direct to carrier connections globally in order to be able to reach out to your customers, whether it's a transactional notification or marketing content. It's quite a cumbersome process if you were to do it as a brand. But with a partner like us, it makes it so much easier. And our verticals basically span across fintech, e-commerce, health technologies, e-mobility, logistics, media and entertainment. Any basically industry or vertical that deals with communication. And our programmable communication platform delivers a suite of tools and advanced customer engagement supports, and obviously the most important thing, security and authentication. Now, in addition to those channels, we also have what we call our SaaS solutions. We actually have a fully fledged cloud-based contact center solution. And then we have our AI chatbot, which will be part of the theme that we'll be discussing today. The AI chatbot works very well with the contact center solution that we have. So imagine you want to do some form of self-service over WhatsApp, and then at some stage you require to speak to a live person. So the transition between a chatbot to the contact center environment is very seamless because first and foremost we make sure that the context in which you're engaging with the brand is kept, so that when it reaches the contact center environment, they already know what the problem is, right? How often have you made a phone call and you had to hold on the line once the machine maybe did not meet your requirements, and then you still have to repeat yourself? So we make sure that the transition between a chatbot and a contact center environment is done very seamlessly. And this spans across multiple different channels, whether it's WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook Messenger, or whether it's actual voice. In addition, what we've seen is quite popular is WebRTC as well. So we cover all those different channels that are associated with any kind of digital communication. Now, as you can see on the agenda, I'll be covering omnichannel as a subject, and then how we're humanizing and personalizing the shopping experience in today's theme, AI and chatbots, and then the technology stack and the best practices that come with it. Now, before I get into the actual presentation, these are a few stats. I just wanted to give the audience some perspective on how customer behavior is set up in the digital space. As you can see, 35% of customers are happier to engage with brands on digital channels since the pandemic. I think this one is quite a no-brainer. It's much easier and convenient, but given the pandemic, it sort of expedited the whole process. as well. And about 46% of customers say the pandemic has made technology a major player role or a major role in how they engage with brands. Again, this is actually self-explanatory. And then the last one says 51% of customers are using the right channels and demonstrates a brand's understanding of their personal, preferences. So it's very important that even when you strategically create these user experiences, you have to put the customer first. Now, as I explained earlier on, from an Africa perspective, it's very important that we sort of set the theme according to what we've seen in the digital space and in how businesses and organizations have started this digital transformation journey. But in addition to that, we also have to consider brands which are what we call digital natives. Now, digital natives are brands that are purely existing in the digital space, right? A good example for that is the likes of Netflix or any food delivery services. Those are what we call, digital natives. But that doesn't take away from brands that already do have a brick and mortar model. It's just that they need to, digitally transform. So in the fintech space, a very good example of that is a bank, right? A bank has a physical presence and a digital presence. So it's really about how the brand strategy is set up. From an e-commerce perspective, this one is self-explanatory, shopping online, those kind of use cases. But shopping on its own, does add value for the customers. But what about being able to design certain journeys based on their experience on the e-commerce platform in order to, generate more revenue by, suggesting certain things that might be relevant to that specific client. And then, of course, there's health technology, which is also another sector that we've seen starting to blow up from a digital perspective. E-mobility, I think I've also covered on that as well. But B2B logistics, again, it's also important. I mean, looking at the likes of Uber, looking at Bolt, those kind of use cases where, it's delivery services and so forth. So that's also another prominent, type of use case that we've seen with these digital natives. And the last one is media entertainment. I think I've touched on that. Netflix is a very good example of that. And if you look at how they also sort of have their business model set up, they look at the experiences that you have. They do a lot of suggestions as to if you like a certain movie, maybe you might like what we recommend. So that kind of proactivity is very important as an organization to have, regardless of what vertical you have. Now, looking at omnichannel as a topic, I just want to give everybody perspective based on this diagram. What typically happens, with the customer is that they have these different sort of channels. It could be a chat app, it could be email, it could be SMS, it could be a mobile app, right? And an app can be any kind of app, whether it's a food app or a banking app. That's their reality. That's how they engage with brands. But then in the middle, we have what we call company data. Company data is all the information that you need, number one, to run the organization. But then you have the likes of CRMs, where you actually have the customer data. But more often than not, a CRM is what it is. It's a CRM. It won't give you strategies where you can actually enhance customer experience. It will give you the insights to a certain extent of what kind of products maybe your customer has, but it will never give you that strategy of how to entice the customer and convert them to buying other products, which is why our model is set up as such, right? We look at the channels in which the customer uses, then we look at the company data. Then we leverage on that company data. But before we leverage on that, we also look at what are the touch points each organization has to engage with the customer. They might not have them all, remember. It could be just the relevant channels that make sense for the organization, but most importantly, make sense for the customer. So in this use case, we have a website, we have a mobile app, right? With our platform, we have what we call our moment solution. You could actually, through our SDK, load some trigger points on the website and on the mobile app. And when that happens, that information gets imported in our people module. The people module will basically leverage off the company data versus the user behavior, and then enrich the data to come up with a customer profile. And when you have that customer profile, it's very easy for you to engage in the client based on the use cases that are associated with it. It could be either the client is engaging with you, willingly from their end. Maybe they want to do some form of self-service, or it could be that you're reaching out based on the entry points that you saw on the website. A basic entry point could be Ori logs in on a banking website. He starts reading about how you could possibly switch his existing business with another service provider to the new service provider, and that user journey gets picked up on the website because maybe you have an existing account with them. Now that journey means we'll be able to send you an email to say, hey, look, we saw that you were quite interested in this particular product. If you want us to call you, please, click here, or please just find us on WhatsApp. You see, those kind of journeys really add value. And as we all know that customer behavior is very dynamic, right? As much as sometimes people are saying, data is the new oil. Yes, I would say 80%. And that other 20% that I'm referring to is each customer is different, and each customer is forever evolving. With data, it's ever changing. So you can never use that analogy because today a customer could like chatting with a brand on WhatsApp. Then tomorrow Telegram becomes the next big thing, and you need an omni-channel approach that will be able to cover all those different concepts that the client number one is dealing with, and the organization having to be dynamic enough to do that. So our solution really, whether it's the usage of APIs or you just want to use our front end, it's more than flexible enough that even if a marketing organization, for example, would like to send campaigns to specific users based on their profile and based on what they've seen on the entry points, they could do so without really doing a lot of development by just using our GUI. And I think the statistic also just adds a lot of value in the greater scheme of things in terms of the topic. It says 65% of customers say that having their issues resolved in their chosen channels is the most important aspect of a good customer service, right? I always use an example of ambient computing. Ambient computing basically is where humans and technology work together without them feeling like there's some form of additional sort of cumbersome experience in it. Imagine just you have your phone on your pocket and then getting a notification that makes sense to you. It all seems seamless and natural. And this is what we're trying to achieve basically as Infobip and what we're trying to output for our customers. It's not about having a presence everywhere. It's about having a presence where the customer wants to be spoken to. Now, as the world becomes increasingly digital, businesses are also forced to find new ways of connecting with customers. So why do businesses then need to humanize their digital experience, right? Which is something I actually touched earlier on. Long before the pandemic, many businesses had a plan to go digital. And fast forward today, you will see that the pandemic has massively accelerated the adoption and moved towards digital platforms, right? And logically, the main reason is driven by both economic and efficiency considerations. For example, if you look at, I have two options. I could either go to the bank, do whatever transactions I need to execute, or I could do it at the comfort of my own home. I will save petrol, I will save time. I will do it definitely in a more efficient way than I would have if I went to the actual bank. So these are some of the considerations that organizations need to bear in mind when they design these use cases as well, right? And of course, let's not forget about the growing realization that a new generation of digitally connected customers, right? They do not only expect convenience, but also a memorable customer experience. This is what we spoke about when we spoke about ambient computing and being able to incorporate technology, but at the same time giving it that human touch. I think Zenzele also touched on that, because consumers' desire to interact with the business is fundamentally and vitally changing, and this presents growth and an opportunity for these organizations, which is why it's important that humanizing digital interaction is crucial for these businesses. Now, before I get into the actual theme of this, I just want to discuss a few technologies, in terms of AIs and chatbots. I think a few concepts were discussed in the previous presentation. But when it comes to artificial intelligence, you have concepts like NLP, which is natural language processing, right? there's different variations in which you can greet a human being, right? I could say "Eita," I could say "Hi." There's so many ways, and artificial intelligence makes it so much easy, to make sure that each and every context or intent is well identified by the processing engine behind the chatbot, so that you can present the relevant information to the customer. Imagine if I said "Eita," and then all of a sudden the bot says, "I'm sorry, I could not get that." Already it kills the experience. So having that natural language processing element to your AI chatbot really adds a lot of value, because depending on the data sets that you load on the chatbot, it will be able to, to understand and provide that conversational experience from the user. But in addition to that, we go as far as named entity recognition. Now, a very good example of that is you want to take, a flight to New York next week, Wednesday. Traditionally, a simple chatbot will ask you, what's your name? What's your surname? Where do you plan to go? It will ask you step by step. But if you said to the chatbot, I want to go to New York Monday morning, next week, Friday, it will actually have the intelligence to actually pick up the dates, the months, and the times in which you want to travel to New York. So that's the extra edge that we incorporate in our chatbots to ensure that the experience is at its best. And my advice with this topic, what I normally say is, start small, right? Look at the use cases that really add a lot of value. And a very good example I normally use is, if you get to a restaurant and look at the menu, right? You don't need a conversational experience to order what you need. The menu is exactly that. You look at option one, you select option one. But some use cases, especially with voice and some chat banking use cases, you might want to have the conversational experience, which is why, as much as we involved a lot of R&D in the technology itself, we also consider the CX side of things, which is why the past about year and a half, we have also invested time in our CX offerings, where we actually design these customer journeys and making sure that we leverage on AI when the use case really fits. It's fitting enough for us to incorporate artificial intelligence. And of course, with IVR, being conversational is also important, because as much as it's a machine in the background, you need to make sure that the context is also done right. Just to get through a few surveys, I think that really makes sense for me. It says, it is reported that within a purchase process, 95% of users will typically refuse to move on to the next stage if it requires to switch apps. You see that customer experience we're referring to. You need to make sure that whatever campaigns or whatever journeys you design, they become seamless. This is where the CX expertise that come with the technology go hand in hand. You can't just focus on the technology. You gotta also focus on the human element and the CX, aspect of it. And over the past year and a half, customer experience trends have shifted rapidly. And customers today actually expect lightning fast responses, and they are not interested in what time of day it is. All they care about is the self-service that comes with it. And again, this not necessarily does not put organizations under pressure. What it does is it allows them to even service their customers outside working hours. Imagine being able to purchase certain products any time of day. I mean, that's something that's quite popular with the e-commerce platforms and so forth. But some organizations work 8 to 5, and they still need to continue and make sure that business continuity is intact even after those hours. And therefore, having a chatbot, being able to self-service, people during that specific off time, it adds a lot of value. Now, again, what's also important is that your technology stack must also be able to support that specific strategy. And if you are not a communication platform as a service provider, then don't try to be. The biggest challenges I've seen with organizations is, number one, the biggest stumbling block for them is that they like to work in silos. And when they work in silos, it means, let's be practical. Let's use a bank. A bank has retail banking. They have corporate investment banking. They have different kinds of departments. What normally happens, and what I've seen with these type of clients, is that they tend to have different service providers doing the very same thing, which creates business analytics and intelligence very cumbersome because you have to retrieve data from different locations that are doing the same thing but with a different structure. So if you're not in the CPAS place, it's better to work with a company that can, cover that part for you, where you just focus on, the operational side of things of your organization, rather than, adding a lot of weight again on IT, because you guys, or because an organization is working in different silos, and therefore it's just becomes a very lengthy process to even transform as an organization. And we all have experienced how digital transformation over the last 14 to 6 months has accelerated the adoption of, cloud technology. And businesses all over the place were forming teams and starting ad hoc initiatives and a frenzy of activity just to try and keep up with the pace of the competition. And rightfully so, it makes sense to just create, a pool of partners that will help you address certain things as an organization that you would have typically gone for, but that you don't specialize in. So outsourcing is quite a common aspect that we've seen with these brands, and all of it good, and of course, all of it is good, and of course, with the right place. However, it has led to the business gap, and that gap is basically customer experience, because you're doing all these processes, but you're not really considering the customer, which is why it's also important to work with a partner that really understands the omni-channel experience, and also understanding how to harness each and every channel in the most efficient way, and helping you digitize your traditional processes into a digital experience for the greater scheme of things in the future, where a lot of these digital natives, or Generation Z, of which you call them, where they just expect everything to be serviced in the digital space. Okay, I think this concludes my presentation. I'm more than happy to do Q&As from my end. If you require any further information, I think my email will be shared post the presentation, and I'm more than happy to get into more discussions.
Thank you, Ore. Quite an insightful presentation. Despite the need for us to adopt artificial intelligence, still the human touch is still very much relevant. Thank you for very insightful presentation. Any questions from the floor? If there are any questions, please let them come through. I enjoyed your presentation. Like they say, experiences are in the eyes of the beholder. I think I'm one of the people who have been captivated by your presentation. It's very helpful if we strive to implement the suggestions and what you brought on table.
Thank you so much.
Yes, there is a comment there coming. Thanks, that was good info from Gavin Smith.
Thanks,
thank
Gavin.
you.
I see Gavin is from Splunk, and Splunk is very much data driven. They work with MNOs. They've got a vast array of customers. I've worked with Splunk in the past, and the way they consolidate data is quite vital for their clients. Thanks, Gavin.
Is it true? Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I think we will take our 1 minute break, and then we get to the next presenter. Thank you, Ore.
Thanks.
Have a fruitful day.
You
Thanks
too.
very
Thanks,
much.
Benson. Bye.